December 12th, 2024, Dixon, Illinois. Population 15,000 and change. It's a cold Thursday night, and all over town the same news alert lights up the same phones. The President of the United States has just ended the sentence of Rita Crundwell. For 22 years, Crundwell was this town's comptroller, and its thief. $53.7 million. The largest municipal fraud in American history, out of a city whose entire budget ran $8 or $9 million a year. She still had years left to serve. Now she's free. Signed off by the White House, the city manager calls it a travesty of justice. A congressman calls it a slap in the face. The marshal who spent years auctioning her assets says she, quote, just also conned the president. Easy, partner. Outrage is the cheap seat, and every channel on this platform is already selling it. On this board, we ask the harder question first. How does a town of 15,000 people lose $53 million? And nobody notices for 22 years. To answer that, we rewind once, all the way back. Dixon, Illinois. Ronald Reagan grew up here. A courthouse clock, a river, and a city hall where everybody knows everybody. Rita Crundwell started in that building in 1970 as a work-study student, a year before she finished high school. By 1983, she was running the money. All of it. Comptroller and treasurer in one person. Hold that detail. In a healthy city, the person who keeps the books and the person who moves the cash are two different people, so each one watches the other. In Dixon, both jobs sat in one chair. Hers. December 1990. Crundwell opens a new bank account, RSCDA. She'd say it stood for the Reserve Sewer Capital Development Account, which sounds exactly like the kind of gray, boring municipal fund nobody ever asks a question about. That was the point. Because Dixon had no such fund, the account had exactly one authorized signature on it. Hers. The machine was almost insultingly simple. Move city money into the Capital Development Fund, invent an invoice, 159 of them over the years, dressed up as bills from the state of Illinois. Write a check payable to treasurer, a word that sounds official and means nothing, and deposit it into RSCDA. And when the bank statements arrive at City Hall, she opens the mail. When the budget came up short, she had the perfect cover story. The state of Illinois is late with its payments again. In Illinois, that excuse always sounded plausible. The average haul, about $2.5 million a year. In 2008 alone, $5.8 million. Out of a town whose operating budget was maybe $9 million. Her official salary the entire time, $80,000. So where did $53 million go? That's the part that made this case famous. Horses. Champion American quarter horses. Crundwell built RC quarter horses into one of the top breeding operations in the country. Her horses won 52 world championships. The American Quarter Horse Association named her leading owner 8 years in a row, roughly 400 horses, a motorhome that cost $2.1 million, a ranch, trucks, jewelry, a home in Florida, and none of it was hidden. That's the detail that should stop you cold. She stood under arena spotlights holding trophies on an $80,000 salary, and the town cheered for her. Because small towns audit the way families trust. She's one of ours. Rita's good with money. Meanwhile, in Dixon, the police department couldn't afford new radios. The street crew got cut from 9 workers to 6. 65 blocks of road repaired in an entire decade. City employees went more than 2 years without a raise, approved by the same woman flying between horse shows. And every single year, outside auditors signed off on the books, the same firms for most of her tenure. Remember them. They come back at the end of this story with a very specific number attached. So how does it end? Not with an audit, with a vacation. Fall 2011. Crundwell goes on an extended vacation, and the city clerk, Kathy Swanson, fills in. Doing routine work, Swanson requests the city's bank statements, all of them, and in the stack is an account nobody has ever heard of. RSCDA, sole signer, Rita Crundwell, deposit after deposit after deposit. Swanson doesn't confront her, doesn't whisper it around town. She walks it to Mayor Burke. Burke walks it to the FBI. And then, this is the discipline that saves the whole case. They keep the secret for 6 months while the Bureau quietly pulls records. Rita comes back to a city hall that smiles at her every morning and documents her every afternoon. April 17th, 2012. She arrives at work. The FBI is waiting. She pleaded guilty to wire fraud in 2012, November 14th. She was sentenced in 2013, on Valentine's Day, to 19 years and 7 months in federal prison. The judge revoked her bail on the spot. She left the courtroom in custody, restitution ordered, every dollar. $53,740,394, cell door closes. Story over. Right? That's where every other video about this case ends. Now come back to the present with me, because the last act is the part nobody covered. First, the money. The U.S. Marshals auctioned everything. Roughly 400 horses, the trucks, the jewelry, the ranch, the $2.1 million motorhome, which fetched $800,000. The auctions brought in around $12 million. Her own nephew bought the ranch for $1 million. Then Dixon did something small towns almost never do. It went after the professionals. The city sued the auditors who had signed off on those books year after year, and the bank that quietly held the RSCDA account. In 2013, they settled for $40 million, $35.15 million from the audit firm Clifton Larson Allen, $3.5 million from Fifth Third Bank, $1 million from a local CPA. Lawyers took about 10, added all up, and Dixon clawed back roughly 40 of the $54 million it lost, and put it into debts, streets, and the riverfront. Not whole, but not nothing. And sit with the auditor's number for a second. The people who were paid to catch this paid more than half the damage for missing it. Now, Rita. 2020. COVID reaches the federal prisons. Congress passes the CARES Act, which lets the Bureau of Prisons move medically vulnerable inmates to home confinement. August 4th, 2021. Crundwell leaves prison in Minnesota after roughly 8.5 years, about 43% of her sentence, and moves to her brother's farm outside Dixon, still serving her sentence, technically, just at home, in the same county she robbed. Dixon swallowed that one. Then came December 12th, 2024. President Biden, in the largest single-day clemency action in modern history, commutes nearly 1,500 sentences at once. Everyone on that list fit the same profile. Moved to home confinement under the CARES Act, at least a year served at home, a record of reintegration. Crundwell fit the criteria. Nobody at the White House picked her name out of a hat. A category swept her up. That's the fair version, and you deserve to hear it. But be precise about the word, because half the internet got it wrong that night. A commutation is not a pardon. A pardon forgives the crime. A commutation only ends the sentence. Rita Crundwell is still a convicted felon. The guilty plea, the record, the judgment, all of it stands. What ended on December 12th was the clock. She wasn't due to finish that sentence until 2028. 8 days later, the Bureau of Prisons confirmed she was no longer in custody. She walked free at 71, and Dixon's reaction was not partisan. It was unanimous. The city manager, who was the police chief the day she was arrested, called her a criminal who demonstrated no remorse and said the news cuts the scar back open. The former mayor, the message seems to be crime pays. The congressman called it a slap in the face to the police officers, firefighters, and city workers of Dixon. And the marshal who auctioned her horses said it plainest. She just also conned the president. Where is she now? Free, in the Dixon area as far as reputable reporting goes. And that's where the reporting ends. So, that's where I end. On this show, we don't guess about living people. So, what does Case File 9 leave on the board? First, small towns audit the way families trust, and that is exactly the vulnerability. One person kept the books, moved the cash, and opened the mail for 29 years. No rotation, no second signature. Nobody rude enough to ask how the comptroller pays for 400 horses. Fraud doesn't require genius, partner. It requires politeness. If your town's controls come down to "she would never," you don't have controls. You have faith. And second, a sentence is not a fact. It's a policy. It can end early in ways no voter ever sees. A pandemic statute here, a clemency batch there. 19 years became 8.5 in a cell, 3 at the farm, and then a news alert. Every step of it was legal. Every step followed the rules, which is exactly why it's worth understanding, because the next time it happens, it won't make the news at all. This board's done, though tonight I'm stamping it case closed with an asterisk, but the next folder on my desk is the big one, a $40 billion collapse. A fake passport in a Montenegro airport, and a year-long extradition tug-of-war. The season finale, Case File 10, is already open. Subscribe, partner.